in his defense of the United States homeland to stop these illegal narcotics from coming to our borders, whether that's by land or by sea. And he's also made it quite clear that he wants to correct the wrongs of the weaponized Justice Department under the previous administration. And Ouija, I'll call on you because I think we're wearing matching blazers today.
I was going to
Great
compliment
minds.
yours. Thank you, Karoline.
Sure.
So just to be clear, to clarify on Jackie and Gabe, did Admiral Bradley order that second strike because there were still survivors after the initial strike?
Again, as I read for you, Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law. He directed the engagement to ensure the boat was destroyed and the threat of narco-terrorists to the United States was completely eliminated.
So was the initial order from Secretary Hegseth, everyone be killed, and did that come from President Trump?
I saw that quoted in a Washington Post story. I would reject that the Secretary of War ever said that. However, the President has made it quite clear that if narco-terrorists, again, are trafficking illegal drugs towards the United States, he has the authority to kill them. And that's what this administration is doing.
And can I
Danny?
follow up on the MRI? Because President Trump yesterday said that he would release the results of his MRI. Is that happening right now?
It is happening right now. As part of, and this is a summary from the President's physician, and we will release it right now. I think my team has it teed up for all of you. I'll read it for you, and then you'll get it physically as well. As part of President Trump's comprehensive executive physical, advanced imaging was performed because men in his age group benefit from a thorough evaluation of cardiovascular and abdominal health. The purpose of this imaging is preventative, to identify any issues early, confirm overall health, and ensure the President maintains long-term vitality and function. President Trump's cardiovascular imaging was perfectly normal. No evidence of arterial narrowing impairing blood flow or abnormalities in the heart or major vessels. The heart chambers are normal in size, the vessel walls appear smooth and healthy, and there are no signs of inflammation or clotting. Overall, his cardiovascular system shows excellent health. His abdominal imaging is also perfectly normal. All major organs appear very healthy and well perfused. Everything evaluated is functioning within normal limits with no acute or chronic concerns. In summary, this level of detailed assessment is standard for an executive physical at President Trump's age and confirms that he remains in excellent overall health. Again, we will provide that to you. I think that's quite a bit of detail, and in the effort of transparency, the President promised it last night, and we have delivered today. So there you go. Danny.
Thanks, Karoline. Just going back to Venezuela, can you confirm that President Trump is going to be hosting a meeting of his national security team in the Oval Office today on Venezuela? And what are they going to discuss? Are they hoping to reach a kind of final decision on that?
Out of the effort of transparency, I will confirm that the President will be meeting with his national security team on this subject and on many matters. He meets with his national security team quite often. He's the commander-in-chief. It's part of his responsibility to ensure that peace is ongoing throughout the world. I'm definitely not going to detail the specifics of a meeting between the President and his national security team that's taking place in the Oval Office, but I'm happy to confirm that meeting is taking place for you.
Can you tell us, is there still, what's the position on whether US troops on the ground is a possibility there? Is that, I know you've answered that before, but what's the current operative
in
status?
Venezuela? I think my previous answer stands. There's many options at the President's disposal that are on the table, and I'll let him speak on those. Ed.
The U.S. announced a trade framework deal with the United Kingdom on pharmaceuticals, where they will pay 25% more, and the savings theoretically will go back to American consumers. What guarantees are in that savings will in fact go back to the American consumer and not be sucked up by the company?
I'm going to be honest with you, Ed. I'll get you the answer to that question after the briefing.
So the American Rescue Plan,
Sure.
funded a number of universal income.
Kush will get you that answer, right, Kush? My trade guy over here.
The American Rescue Plan funded a number of universal basic income programs. Now Cook County, Illinois is extending that program into 2026 with $7.5 million of taxpayer money. What does the White House think about that?
I'll also get you an answer on that after the briefing.
Two for two.
Go ahead. Sure. And then
in the interest of transparency, does the White House support releasing the Department of Defense's video of those September 2nd strikes on those military boats? And also, separate topic on presidential pardon power. Why did the president commute the sentence of David Gentile recently? He was a private equity executive. He served 12 days out of a 7-year sentence. Prosecutors said he defrauded $1.6 billion with thousands of victims, including veterans, farmers, teachers. Why was he pardoned?
To your first question, that's definitely not a decision for me to make. I would defer you to the Department of War. It's also probably a decision for the president himself to make. As for your second question with respect to that pardon, he issued a commutation for Mr. Gentile, who's the former CEO and co-founder of GBP Capital Holdings. Unlike similar companies, GBP paid regular annualized distributions to its investors. In 2015, GBP disclosed to investors the possibility of using investor capital to pay some of these distributions rather than funding them from current operations. Even though this was disclosed to investors, the Biden Department of Justice claimed it was a Ponzi scheme. This claim was profoundly undercut by the fact that GBP had explicitly told investors what would happen. At trial, the government was unable to tie any supposedly fraudulent representations to Mr. Gentile. In short, again, this is another example that has been brought to the president's attention of a weaponization of justice from the previous administration, and therefore he signed this commutation.
Statements, though, say that these people were defrauded.
I just read you a very detailed summary of why the commutation was made. Sure. In the middle with the red tie.
Thank you, Karoline.
Okay, Andrew, go ahead, and then you.
In wake of Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor
Go ahead
Greene's early resignation, reports last week indicated that other House Republicans might consider doing the same. Does the president have any concerns in light of those reports about other House Republicans potentially leaving early, as well as the other announced retirements that we saw in the last couple of days?
Look, I think the president maintains very good relationships with the vast majority, maybe with the exception of one or two. I think many in this room know who I'm referring to. Very good relationships with members of Capitol Hill within the Republican Party. And the president clearly is the unequivocal leader of the Republican Party. I think it was a recent CNN poll that actually showed that more than 90% of Republicans continue to support President Trump as the leader. So he maintains very good relations, as does his entire team here at the White House. And of course, we have a very slim margin in the House, and the president wants that to continue. Andrew, go ahead.
I've got two for you.
Sure.
First, on the Venezuela strike. You said that second strike was in full accordance with the law of armed conflict, but the Navy's own manual of law of war says that specifically firing on survivors from a wrecked vessel is an example of a war crime that's forbidden under U.S. law and the law of armed conflict. So how was that second strike in following law of armed conflict, and then second on immigration?
Again, Andrew, I would reiterate to you the strike was conducted in international waters and in accordance with the law of armed conflict. And since somebody asked about Congress, and it's sort of related to Venezuela, I also want to add that Secretary Hegseth spoke with members of Congress who may have expressed some concerns over the weekend. And there have also been 13 bipartisan briefings to Congress on the Venezuelan strikes. There have been a number of document reviews for members of Congress to review the classified DOJ Office of Legal Counsel opinion and other related documents. 29 senators and 92 representatives have reviewed those documents, which is about 2/3 of those are Democrat members, and they have been made available to all 100 senators, all 435 members of the House, and to general counsels of the relevant committees on a bipartisan basis for their review.
On immigration, during your topper you said, and I quote, "Leaders also have a duty to preserve the integrity and character of our nation's national identity." Can you explain what you mean by our nation's national identity and integrity and character, and how would refugees, people coming from war-torn places who are seeking a safe haven in America, like many of our forebears in this room, not add to our nation's integrity and character of our national identity?
I'll tell you what does not add to our nation's character and integrity is refugees who come here under the alleged plight of asylum and fleeing persecution, and then come to the United States to abuse our system and rip off American taxpayers. And as I pointed out, the New York Times, to their credit, it was about 6 months too late, but they did write about how Somali immigrants in Minnesota have been ripping off American taxpayers. In fact, 86 people have been charged in a rampant and widespread fraud scheme spanning multiple programs in Minnesota. Of those 86, 78 of those people are Somali, 91% of them charged. So far, 59 of those people have been convicted for their roles in fraud plots that have stolen $1 billion from taxpayers. In one scheme, and this is egregious, a nonprofit and its affiliates with these Somali migrants claimed to have fed tens of thousands of American children during the pandemic. They were reimbursed for those meals by taxpayers. However, federal prosecutors found that almost all of those meals were never even delivered to hungry children. In fact, those organizations' leaders spent the money on houses, luxury cars, and real estate in Turkey and Kenya. Another scheme involved hundreds of organizations who were reimbursed for services that were supposed to help people at risk of homelessness. Once again, those services were never provided. All of this has happened under Democrat leadership in a Democrat-run state where these refugees, these migrants are coming to the United States. They are abusing our system. They are draining our resources that should be going to law-abiding, taxpayer-funded, tax-paying Americans. And this president is not going to put up with it anymore. Rachel.
Thank you, Karoline. Just to follow back up on the Washington Post reporting, so much of the concern from Democrats and Republicans is focused on the survivors. Why won't the administration either confirm or deny or reveal whether or not there were survivors after that initial first strike? And what imminent threat would two survivors pose who were clinging presumably to the wreckage of that boat?
Again, as I said, I think you guys are sort of not listening fully to the statement I've provided. Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law, directing the engagement to ensure the boat was totally destroyed and the threat to the narco-terrorists, to the United States, was eliminated. And for any further questions about his thinking, I would defer you to the Department of War. I obviously wasn't in the room for these.
Just to follow up, Karoline, just on the administration's policy when it comes to survivors, was there a change in policy after this strike on September 2nd? The Washington Post is reporting that these two survivors were killed after a second strike, but then in October, two people were rescued and returned to Colombia and Ecuador. So was there a decision that was made to handle survivors differently after these strikes?
Not to my knowledge, no. Steve.
The president confirmed that he spoke to the Venezuelan leader. Are you trying to negotiate his departure? Is there an asylum deal under work?
President, as you know, last night on Air Force One, he said, I don't want to comment on that, but I did speak to him in the effort of transparency. So there you go. You got your confirmation. I'll let him speak further if he wishes to on the details of that conversation that took place.
Steve Witkoff is headed to Moscow. How close are you to some sort of Ukraine agreement?
I think the administration feels very optimistic. Obviously, you've seen, Steve, that the president's entire team, including Special Envoy Witkoff and Secretary Rubio and the vice president and the president himself, Secretary Hegseth as well, have been working so hard on this effort, and they all really want to see this war come to an end. And so just yesterday, Sunday, I believe that was yesterday, they had very good talks with the Ukrainians in Florida, and now, of course, Special Envoy Witkoff is on his way to Russia. This is sort of the shuttle diplomacy that you've seen from this administration play out, where we speak equally with both sides. We've put points on paper. Those points have been very much refined, but as for the details, I will let the negotiators negotiate, but we do feel quite good, and we're hopeful that this war can finally come to an end.